Welcome to another episode of My Weird Prompts, an AI-generated podcast featuring the random prompts of Daniel Rosehill as answered by a revolving cast of friendly AI characters. Join us for deep dives into AI, technology, and whatever other random thing Daniel finds fascinating today. Subscribe on Spotify or your favorite podcatcher. Now, today's episode.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
Hey everyone, welcome back to My Weird Prompts. I am Corn, and I am joined as always by my brother, the man who probably has a radar signature of his own at this point.
Herman Poppleberry, reporting for duty. And honestly, Corn, with the amount of activity in the skies over the last few days here in Jerusalem, I think we all feel like we have radar dishes for ears.
It has been intense. We are recording this on a Monday, and the rumble of intercepts is still fresh in our minds. But today we are shifting our focus a bit. Our housemate Daniel sent us a voice note this morning about something that has been largely overshadowed by the local headlines. He wanted us to look at the air defense performance of the Gulf states during these massive Iranian missile and drone barrages.
It is a brilliant prompt from Daniel because, while everyone is talking about the Arrow system or the Iron Dome here, there is this massive, high-stakes success story happening just across the water in the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan. These countries just passed what you could call the ultimate real-world stress test for modern air defense.
Right, and it is not just a story of buying expensive toys. It is a story of how these systems actually talk to each other, or don't. Daniel was asking if these countries are truly independent in their defense, or if it is all just a US-operated shield with a local flag on it.
That is the multi-billion-dollar question, and to really understand it, we have to look at the sheer scale of what just happened. If you look at the numbers coming out of the United Arab Emirates Ministry of Defense, they have been dealing with an onslaught. We are talking about over 500 drones and more than 160 ballistic missiles detected in just the last few days of this escalation.
I saw those figures. They reported an interception rate of about 92%. For a country that is essentially a series of high-rise cities and critical energy infrastructure, 92% is the difference between business as usual and a national catastrophe.
Exactly. And the mix of tech they are using is fascinating. Most people know the Patriot, which is the workhorse, but the Emirates are the first international customer to actually use the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, or THAAD, in combat. They used it back in 2022 against Houthi missiles, but this recent wave was on a completely different level of complexity.
Let us pause on THAAD for a second, Herman, because I think there is a misconception that these systems are just set it and forget it. When a THAAD battery is deployed, like the ones we have seen recently, how much of that is actually an Emirati crew versus American personnel?
That is a sensitive point. A standard THAAD battery requires about 95 to 100 soldiers to operate. While the Emirates have been training their own crews for years, the integration with the broader early warning network is still heavily tied to United States Central Command, or CENTCOM. In fact, just this past January, a new coordination cell opened up at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. They call it the Middle East Air Defense Combined Defense Operations Cell, or MEAD-CDOC.
That is a mouthful. But the name tells you exactly what is happening. It is a combined cell. So, when a missile launches from an Iranian silo, it is not just one country's radar picking it up.
Right. The United States provides the high-level architectural glue. They have the space-based infrared systems that see the heat bloom of a launch almost instantly. That data gets piped into this new cell in Qatar, which then pushes the warning out to the Emirates, the Saudis, and the Bahrainis. So, while an Emirati officer might be the one pushing the button to launch a South Korean Cheongung II interceptor, the eyes that saw it coming were likely a mix of American satellites and regional radars.
You mentioned the Cheongung II. That is the South Korean medium-range system, right? I am curious about how that performed, because the United Arab Emirates has been very public about diversifying their suppliers. They are not just buying American anymore.
The Cheongung II, also known as the MSAM-2, is actually one of the quiet stars of this conflict. It fills this critical middle-tier gap. Think of it this way. THAAD is for the big, scary ballistic missiles coming in from the upper atmosphere. The Patriot handles the mid to low range, but the Cheongung II is optimized for lower flying cruise missiles and tactical threats. It uses hit-to-kill technology, meaning it literally rams the target rather than just exploding near it.
And the Emirates are using those alongside Russian Pantsir systems, and even the Israeli-made Barak system. How do you get a Russian radar and a South Korean interceptor and an American satellite to talk to each other without them just glitching out?
That is the weird part of the prompt that Daniel probably suspected. It is a massive systems integration nightmare that they have somehow turned into a functional reality. They use something called Link 16, which is the standard tactical data link for the United States and NATO allies. But for the non-American systems, they have to use these proprietary gateways that translate the data in real time. It is like having a United Nations meeting where everyone has a universal translator in their ear, but if the translator lags by even half a second, the city gets hit.
Let us look at Qatar for a moment. They reported a 96% interception rate. 63 out of 65 ballistic missiles were neutralized. That is almost a perfect score, but 2 missiles did hit Al Udeid Air Base.
And that is the base that houses the very coordination cell we were just talking about. It shows that even with a 96% success rate, the sheer volume of a saturation attack can eventually leak through. One drone also hit an early warning radar installation in Qatar. That is a tactical choice by the attacker. If you can blind the radar, the rest of the interceptors are just expensive lawn ornaments.
It is interesting that Qatar is using the German Gepard and Skynex systems as well. We saw the Gepard do incredible work in Ukraine against those same Shahed drones. It is a much more cost-effective way to handle a $20,000 drone than firing a $4 million Patriot missile.
You hit on the biggest takeaway from this entire week, corn, the economic asymmetry. Some analysts are calling it using Ferraris to intercept e-bikes.
I like that analogy.
It is painfully accurate. Iran's total outlay for the attack on the Emirates was estimated at somewhere between $170 million and $360 million. That sounds like a lot, right? But the cost for the Emirates to intercept those munitions was between $1.45 billion and $2.28 billion.
So, for every dollar Iran spent on a drone, the defender spent $20 to $30 to shoot it down. That is not a sustainable long-term strategy for anyone, even for wealthy Gulf states.
Exactly. This is the core of the Iranian strategy of financial attrition. They don't have to destroy the city, they just have to make the defense so expensive that the country runs out of interceptors or goes bankrupt trying to buy more. We saw that in June of 2025, where the United States reportedly used up about 25% of its entire global stockpile of THAAD interceptors in just 12 days of fighting.
Wait, 25% of the total global stockpile? That is a staggering number for a 12-day window.
It is. The United States only produces about a dozen THAAD interceptors per year. One battery carries 48. So if you fire off a full load, you have just used up 4 years of production. This is why the Gulf states are so desperate for this integrated air defense architecture. If you can coordinate, you don't double fire at the same target, and you save those precious interceptors.
Let us talk about Jordan. Their role is always so fascinating and delicate. They intercepted 49 drones and missiles recently. King Abdullah II has been very firm that Jordan will not be a battlefield for any party. But obviously, those intercepts are happening over Jordanian soil.
Jordan is in an impossible position. Geographically, they are the hallway through which everyone wants to throw rocks at each other. They used their F-16 fighter jets for a lot of those drone intercepts, which is actually more flexible than a ground-based missile. A jet can loiter, identify the target, and use a shorter range, cheaper air-to-air missile.
But there is a political cost. When Jordan shoots down an Iranian missile headed for Israel, even if they say they are doing it to protect their own sovereignty and prevent debris from falling on their citizens, the optics are complicated in the region.
Very complicated, but the technical performance was undeniably high. They proved that their Royal Jordanian Air Force is fully integrated into that CENTCOM early warning loop. They were seeing the threats at the same time the Americans and Israelis were.
Herman, one thing Daniel asked about was how this compares to the system here in Israel. We have the 3 layers, Iron Dome for the short stuff, David's Sling for the mid-range, and the Arrow 2 and 3 for the long-range and exo-atmospheric stuff. Do the Gulf states have that same seamless layering?
They are getting there, but it is more fragmented. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates are the only ones with the full high-low mix of THAAD and Patriot. Bahrain just recently got the Patriot PAC-3 MSE, which is the most advanced version. But what they lack is the middle layer that Israel has with David's Sling. That is why the Emirates bought the South Korean Cheongung II and are looking at the Israeli Barak system. They are trying to build that middle floor of the house while the roof and the basement are already finished.
It feels like the Gulf states are essentially building a NATO-style integrated defense without the formal treaty. Is that a fair assessment?
I think that is exactly what the United States is pushing for. In episode 684, we talked about the pre-approved spontaneity of these alliances. It is not about a formal piece of paper that says, "We will fight for you." It is about the technical integration. If our computers are all talking to each other and our radars are sharing a common picture, we are an alliance in practice even if we aren't one on paper.
And the performance of the Iranian missiles themselves. We have talked about the success of the defense, but what does this tell us about the effectiveness of the Iranian ballistic tech? They are using the EMOD, the Cheongung II, and the Fateh 313. Are these missiles failing because they are bad, or are they failing because the defense is just that good?
It is a bit of both. The Iranian missiles are increasingly accurate, but they still rely on older secret technology in some cases. However, the sheer volume is the feature, not the bug. If you launch 100 missiles and 99 are shot down, but one hits the radar dome at Al Udeid, you have achieved a tactical victory. The fact that 2 missiles reached Al Udeid despite the presence of some of the world's most advanced defense systems suggests that Iran's saturation tactics are the real threat, rather than the individual quality of any single missile.
That is a sobering thought. It means the defense has to be perfect every single time, while the attacker only has to be lucky once.
Precisely. And that brings us back to the cost. If it costs you $2 billion to be perfect for 48 hours, how long can you keep that up? Saudi Arabia has been dealing with this for years with the Houthi attacks. They have probably fired more Patriot missiles than any other country on Earth at this point. They have become the world's leading experts on logistical sustainability in a missile war.
Which we covered in episode 732, if I recall. The billion-dollar math.
Exactly. And the math hasn't gotten any easier. One of the newer developments we are seeing in Saudi Arabia is the deployment of the Chinese Silent Hunter laser systems. This is the first time we are seeing a major power use lasers in a real combat environment to take out small drones.
Lasers? That sounds like exactly the kind of thing you would be excited about, Herman Poppleberry.
Oh, I am. Think about the cost asymmetry we just discussed. A Patriot missile is $3 to $4 million. A laser shot costs about as much as the electricity to run the generator. Maybe $10?
$10 versus $4 million. That is the ultimate solution to the Ferrari versus e-bike problem.
It is. If the Saudis can prove that the Silent Hunter can reliably take out those Shahed drones at scale, every country in the world is going to be lining up to buy directed energy weapons. It changes the entire calculus of air defense.
So, looking at the big picture for Daniel's prompt, these Gulf states have essentially proven that they can hold their own in a high-intensity conflict, provided the United States keeps the eyes in the sky turned on. They are more capable than almost any other region on Earth, but they are still deeply tethered to American intelligence and logistics.
That is the perfect summary. They have the muscle, but the nervous system is still largely American. However, the move toward South Korean, German, and even Chinese systems shows they are trying to build their own local brain for these systems. They don't want a situation where a future United States administration could just turn off their defense by revoking a software license.
Which is a very real concern when you are talking about systems that are as software dependent as a THAAD battery.
Absolutely. These are basically flying computers. If the software isn't updated with the latest Iranian threat signatures, the hardware is useless.
I think we should talk about the human cost for a second, too. In the Emirates, even with that 92% success rate, there were 3 fatalities and dozens of injuries. In Qatar, 8 people were injured by falling shrapnel. This is the hidden side of air defense. When you blow up a 5-ton missile in the sky, all that metal has to go somewhere.
That is a huge part of the defensive cities problem. If you intercept a missile directly over Abu Dhabi, you are essentially raining down hundreds of pounds of jagged, high-velocity steel onto a civilian population. The Emirates actually had to shift all their schools to distance learning and close parts of their airspace over the last few days just because of the danger from falling debris.
It is a reminder that even a successful defense is still a violent, disruptive event. It is not like a video game where the target just disappears.
No, it is a mess, and the psychological impact on the population is massive. Imagine being in Dubai and seeing a THAAD interceptor streak into the sky at several times the speed of sound. The sonic boom alone is enough to shatter windows.
Let us move into some practical takeaways. If you are a country looking at what just happened in the Gulf, what is the lesson?
Lesson number 1. You need layers. If you only have one type of system, the enemy will find a way to fly under it or over it. You need the THAAD for the high stuff, the Patriot for the mid stuff, and something like the Gepard or a laser for the drones.
Lesson number 2. Integration is more important than the individual interceptor. A mediocre missile with a great radar network is better than a great missile with a blind radar.
Exactly. And lesson number 3, the cost-to-kill ratio is the new front line of warfare. If you can't find a way to shoot down a $20,000 drone for less than $1 million, you're going to lose the war of attrition.
So, looking ahead, do you think we will see a formal Middle East Air Defense Alliance emerge from this? We have seen the coordination cell at Al Udeid. We have seen Jordan, Saudi, and the Emirates all acting in concert, even if they don't always admit it publicly.
I think the combined cell is the embryo of that alliance. The fact that they are now sharing real-time threat warnings in a dedicated facility is a massive leap forward. 10 years ago, the idea of these countries sharing sensitive radar data with each other was unthinkable, but common threats have a way of forcing people into the same room.
It is the pre-approved spontaneity we talked about. When the missiles are in the air, you don't have time for a diplomatic summit. You either have the data link open, or you don't.
And right now, the link is open. It has to be. The sheer volume of Iranian production means that these true promise-style attacks are likely to become the new normal whenever tensions flare up.
It is a strange new world, Herman. We are sitting here in Jerusalem hearing the same rumble that people in Abu Dhabi and Doha are hearing. It is a shared regional experience now, for better or worse.
It really is. And I think Daniel's prompt reminds us that while the headlines focus on the big players, the technical and tactical successes of these Gulf states are fundamentally reshaping the balance of power in the region. They aren't just protected by the United States anymore, they are becoming formidable players in their own right.
Well, I think we have given Daniel a lot to chew on. Before we wrap up, I want to remind everyone that if you are finding these deep dives helpful, please leave us a review on your podcast app or on Spotify. It genuinely helps the show reach more people who are curious about these kinds of rabbit holes.
Yeah, we love seeing the feedback and the questions you all send in. It keeps us on our toes.
You can find all our past episodes, including the ones on missile logistics and regional alliances, at myweirdprompts.com. We also have a contact form there if you want to send us a prompt like Daniel did.
Just don't make them too easy. We like the ones that make us sweat a little.
Speak for yourself, Herman. I am perfectly happy with an easy one every now and then, but this was a great one. Thanks to Daniel for the prompt, and thanks to all of you for listening.
This has been My Weird Prompts. Stay curious and keep your eyes on the skies.
Take care, everyone. See you in the next one.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox Turbo.
Thanks for listening to another episode of My Weird Prompts, an AI-generated podcast featuring Daniel Rosehill's AI prompts, as answered by a revolving cast of friendly AI characters including me, Cornelius the Sloth. Subscribe on Spotify or visit myweirdprompts.com.